Yeah, I just wanted to, because I was witness when that guy fell this front. And I went over and tell Bud on 911 and the nurse.
Okay. They came out and got
And yeah,
Gonna be a lot cheaper
her
than
name is
$60 an hour for an instructor.
Oh, yeah.
some guy
You bought your own plane too, right?
riding that blue band. He fell.
Oh.
Hood fell.
Okay.
And I was witness of it. And I think the animal said my name. Put my name.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll check in on that. Tomorrow I'll find out what's going on.
Okay, being it's 6 o'clock, we'll get started. Pastor Dan, could you give us the invocation tonight, please?
Dan Mysick, Ignite Church. Father, today we just pray for opportunities to abound in this city of Freeport. I just declare Freeport is a place of opportunity, that new ideas are coming to light, that problems are turned into opportunities. I just pray for great efficiency tonight as the council meets together. I pray for a new lens that we may see you correctly, God. I pray for a new lens that as we see you correctly, that we see the city correctly. And I just pray that as we honor you, we honor one another. In Jesus I pray. Amen.
Thank you. Well, we will officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Alderpersons Clem.
Here.
McClanathan.
Here.
Ross is absent. Smith.
Here.
Busker.
Here.
Brashaw.
Here.
Keister.
Here.
And Chesney.
And if you could please join us with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Alderman Clem.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public comments are, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Our first is the approval of the agenda. Is there such a motion for the approval?
So move.
Motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Keister. All those in favor of the approval of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Next is approval of the minutes from May 21st, 2018. Is there such a motion for the approval of these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman McClanathan for the approval of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Public comments is, we just have one signed up, but it's non-agenda item, so we'll have to wait until the end. And then we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda is considered to be routine in nature and enacted as one unless there's a member of a council that would like to have something removed for further discussion. Is there anyone on the council that would like something removed? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of the approval to receive and place on file the city treasurer's report, April 2018, minutes from the planning commission meeting, April 12, 2018, the approval of the finance bills payable in the total of $411,593.27, and the approval of the payroll for pay period ending May 26, 2018, in the total of $515,428.67. Yes, wouldn't it be nice if it was $515? So anyway, is there such a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Keister for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
And Chesney.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 5 is the recognition of service awards. Manager Crow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have two members that were supposed to be here, but just before, one was a police officer who was on duty and the other one's a firefighter. From what I understand, talking with the chiefs, that we had 2 car accidents just before the meeting, so they are not present. we will hold that off until the next council meeting. But with that, I will bring Scott Curran up here. Curran. So Scott's been with us for 35 years, and you want to come on up? And he is our lead tester in the lab. So Scott, I want to say congratulations to you. We can turn around to so you can see the audience. All right. And so congratulations. 35 years of service. And
and thank you, Scott, for your service. 35 years as lab manager, and Scott and his assistant touch all the laboratory tests of what is done in-house as well as what we contract out. So he also does our pre-treatment inspection program. So we look to have what comes to the wastewater plant in such a condition that we could go and treat it and move it on forward.
And for those who don't know, he is here most weekends. I get emails from him when we're doing water testing. He's the one that clears all the bacteria after we've had a water main break. And he's been to several meetings with us when we deal with our permits. So Scott's a key member of the team and is a key and vital member of the team. So.
Thank you, Scott. Next is item number 6, which is the second reading of ordinance 2018-29. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport amending Ordinance 2017-18 previously adopted by the city regarding the issues of a Meadows TIF redevelopment note or an RDA.
Director McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a second reading. It is to correct a note to JJ Ventures with the City of Freeport. It's a date correction. The TIF itself expires in 2037, and I believe it's just a typo that was on the original note. So we need to amend the title to be correct to reflect 2037 as the expiration date on the note itself.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Smith.
I guess we have a motion to approve it.
Yeah, we do.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of this ordinance?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
And Chesney.
Aye.
That motion passes 8-0. No, it does not. 7-0.
Thank you. Well, we're having a problem with little numbers tonight, I see. All right, item number 7 is the second reading of ordinance 2018-30. Could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance amending the zoning classification of property located at 327 East Spring Street in Freeport from M2 General Manufacturing to B2 Restricted Retail.
Thank you. Director McDonald.
Thank you. Again, this is parcel 327 East Spring Street. They're hoping to amend the zoning from M2 to B1 restricted retail business, which will allow the parcel owner to have not only his business, but a apartment on the first and second floors. We haven't received any comments on this amendment either way, and it was presented to the Planning Council, the actual application, and there were no adverse findings were noted. It was presented to the Planning Council on 5/10 with a recommendation to forward to council with their approval.
Thank you. Director Bucus, did you want to add anything?
No, Your Honor.
Any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. And Nancy, it was all positive as far as the findings of fact go. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And Alderman Chesney.
Thank you, Nancy. No informal objections in emails or anything like that?
None.
Okay.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of this ordinance?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
And Chesney.
Aye.
And that passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 8 is the first reading of ordinance 2018-31. Could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance amending Chapter 886 entitled Hotel Tax of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as many of you are aware, we have, and it actually officially stands up tomorrow, the Greater Freeport Partnership has, or otherwise referred to as the partnership, has gone into stood up, the board has been seated, and as part of that, each one of the different organizations are being incorporated under that organization, that being including the Convention Visitors Bureau. This will take the current ordinance that sends all of the hotel motel tax, the Conventions and Visitors Bureau, and aligns it to the Greater Freeport Partnership. The other thing of note is originally the hotel motel tax was increased from 3% to 5% to pay off the visitor center. The visitor center had been called out to get $40,000 to be paid out of that. The Greater Freeport Partnership is having a lease agreement that will pay off the remainder of that. It was originally supposed to be sunsetting in 2024. With this change, the hotel motel tax will not sunset. If we were to lose home rule, 5% is the maximum that non-home rule communities can carry in their hotel motel tax.
Discussion.
Manager Crowe?
Yes.
So I see it eliminates the 3% and 2% and just combines it into 1 5%.
5%.
You said without the sunset. Furthermore, looking at, I think, the tourism promotion funds, the language that's included in subparagraph A there, is that tailored with the new language to kind of mirror the type of activities or some of the activities that GFP is going to be handling?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to move it forward.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Brashaw to move ordinance 2018-31 on to the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Is there any further discussion? Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to reiterate for the public that the 5% tax is not a change. There's no increase. It's the same. It's just combining the two taxes. I had a few people ask me if it was increasing, and I said, no, it was not. And I just want to make sure that's on public record. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 9, which is the first reading of ordinance 2018-32. Madam Clerk, would you please read this for the record?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport approving and authorizing the city to enter into a lease agreement regarding the property commonly known as 1819 Southwest Avenue, Freeport.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is to authorize me to sign a lease with the purchaser of the fire station at a cost of $1,000 a year until we can identify a new location for testing of hoses and training for the fire department. We are hoping to make the formal closing on the fire station either later this week or early next week. As we go forward, I hate to say it's based upon the attorney's schedule, so is why we haven't closed as of right now. So,
Questions?
Mayor.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
do you need this, in that case, you need this expedited then?
no, we'll need to make sure that we close on the station before this is approved.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Keister.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The only question I would have is for the fire chief. This will give you sufficient access to do what you need to do until another facility is found?
Yeah, it will. Actually, we've had conversation with the new owner down there too, and he's very open to us using the facility and continuing to use it for now, so.
Okay. Follow up, Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to move it forward.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Chesney to move ordinance 2018-32 on to the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Is there further discussion? Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fire Chief Allen, I have one more question. Regarding other fire departments using this training facility, is this still governed in that they could do that if they needed to do their hose testing or anything? I know in the past we've had other fire departments step forward and need to use the facility, or do they have to pay their own fees?
With the Stevenson County Fire Chiefs and MABUS 17, everybody has access to use the facility.
Under the $1,000
Yes.
fee?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
Anything further?
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Smith?
Well, I don't know if anyone else can see it, but the ordinance refers to Exhibit A, and then Exhibit A is blank on my document here.
That would be me.
Well, no, before we adopt it formally, I would, yes. but
It's,
not necessarily.
the Exhibit A should be the lease agreement.
Which is-
I'm sorry that it,
It's on here, Bob.
you got it?
Yeah. You don't have it?
I have it.
Oh, all right. I stand
You
corrected.
found it? All right. good. Okay, and if there's nothing further on this, we will move on to the next item, which is item number 10, the first reading of ordinance 2018-33. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance amending Title IV, Legislation, Chapter 220, Council, Section 220.10 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport regarding rules of council.
Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is, this changes our ordinance dealing with, which we know the city can establish its own ordinance on how council meetings are going to be conducted. It gives the chair the right to preserve order and decorum. The chair reserves the right to halt or suspend the public meeting to a later date if the rules are not followed. It also specifies that no written comments will be accepted in advance or at a public meeting to be read into the record at a meeting. The speakers wishing to address the council must do so in person. That's the modification.
Questions?
Mayor?
Alderman McClathan.
Thank you. I spoke with council. The only thing I'd ask is on an area that is still in here, but you weren't looking to change, and that's on paragraph 22, the third line, and then the fourth line where it says state his or her name and address for the record. My recollection was there's an Attorney General opinion. And I know you weren't looking at this, but if we could clean that up for second reading, that'd be great.
Yep. It's,
Go ahead, Manager Crowe.
and the mayor and I had actually discussed that. You're no longer, all you have to do is state your name. You no longer have to state your address per the Attorney General hearing. In fact, we cannot deny anybody the ability to address council. So we can clean that up before second reading.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor.
Question?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. I have one more question regarding that. Where it says states he or she shall rise if not physically impaired and state his or her name. Obviously, I understood that part. Should this have a directive to also speak into the microphone for listening purposes since we don't have that listed here? Or is that to be understood?
I'm going to ask the attorney.
Attorney.
We can certainly add it in and make that specification there. We're allowed to adopt reasonable rules that govern public comment. I certainly believe that speaking into a microphone so that for the benefit of everybody to hear is a reasonable rule.
I think that would be very reasonable, and I would like to see that included if possible. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
Just a question, and I can look at two different sides of this, but I want to ask it. In other words, if I read this correctly, we're saying a person that cannot attend the meeting cannot submit a letter to be read at the meeting.
That is correct. So in checking with this, we are very unique in that we allow people to submit written ordinance. And what is to ensure that we're following the rules established by the Attorney General and the committee, the PAC, we need to adopt an ordinance to change that and then establish that as our rules going forward. Is that correct, Aaron?
Correct. So again, along the same lines of the fact that we're allowed to adopt reasonable rules, the council can adopt a rule that says that written comments won't be read in, that you have to make your comments actually physically present there, but you have to have it written in as an ordinance, as a part of your ordinance. In order to be able to enforce that, you have to make the amendment to your ordinance, which is what this ordinance does. So,
Okay, if I may, here's the only problem I have with it, is I'm John Doe and I work second shift at Microswitch. and I want to tell you about a problem that I have, and I'd just like to convey it in a normal letter stating what I believe, this and that, so on and so forth. The reason I ask this is simply because I've seen some letters that we've had come through that shouldn't have been read. You know, I understand that. My only problem is I think we're eliminating some people that might not be able to. I'm not saying there's tens of thousands, but that's the only question I bring up.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
I'd follow up on what Alderman Clem says. I have to agree with him on that. I think that limits some of the people out there, either with disabilities or reasons why they can't get here or work schedule, limits them to be able to express their opinion, and I don't know if I'd really be in favor of that. I think there's some way we could make some kind of qualifications that if you fit these guidelines, you are allowed to do that. I'd be happier with that. I mean, just not being able to read it all limits a lot of people from not being able to express their opinion.
I think that's a slippery slope. I certainly understand the position there, but I think as a whole, I think it's got to be one of those things for uniformity and enforcement purposes to not get in a situation where we're treating one person different from another person with some subjective standards there that if you're going to do it, I think you just got to do it blanket to say that we're not going to take any written comment and that people have other options, whether it's to have a representative come and speak on their behalf, which is done often, where someone will send someone to speak because they can't make it because of work or illness or whatever it is. Or they can come to another meeting, a different, maybe one night doesn't work, but they can come to a different night's meeting, whatever it is. So,
Madam Mayor?
Madam Mayor. Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. I agree with Attorney Zeno. We have 8 alderpersons here, and I'm sure a lot of you field calls, as I do, including an alderman at large, that if a constituent has a concern that they want brought up at a council meeting, they can only pick up their phone and they can call one of us or the city mayor or the city manager and express their concerns. I've actually had a few of them call me today expressing concerns about things that I brought up without naming them. If they wanted to be named and they were my constituent, I would be glad to do so. And I think I'm a good filter because rather than using some of the profanity that was used to describe the situation to me, and I can clean it up a little bit before I bring it up before the council. Thank you.
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. Two-part question, Attorney Zito. First is, given that you work with a number of municipalities, what's best practice? What are you seeing out there? What others are doing? Second piece to that is there anything that precludes or prevents anybody from, I mean, every alderperson could, in theory, remove themselves from this desk and read anything in during public comments. So, and it doesn't specify that somebody in the audience who is reading a letter on the behalf of somebody, that they could certainly do that as well. We're just asking for physical presence of somebody to read. So therefore, the way that our current ordinance reads, you could have 20 people write 20 different letters, and we would have to read all these into the record, the way our ordinance is presently written.
correct. So as of right now, I think our ordinance is actually silent as to reading letters that are submitted into the record. However, it's my understanding that past practice has been to read all letters that have been submitted. So now we're just formally codifying one way or the other. In this case, the proposal is to say, no, public comments must be made physically in presence there. So that's what this would adjust, because our current ordinance is silent on the issue, but past practice has been to read everything. Best practices. Now, best practice, shifting to your first question there, is most of my communities that I've seen that we represent, public comment is usually, you have to be there to actually make your comment. We certainly have situations where letters are read in, but they're usually letters from, not necessarily, they're not public comment. They're letters like the Rotary Club has this day coming up and they submit a letter, but it's not an actual comment on a topic or anything, and the mayor will read that letter saying, it's, Poppy's Day or whatever it is this week or anything like that. But most of the time I've seen in my communities that public comment is made in, by the person, physically present.
Mayor?
Alderman Keister.
I guess my question on that is, on Alderperson Bradshaw's suggestion, can we put something in there or let the people know that if they physically cannot be here, they can do it through their alderperson? Because, I mean, if we're going to allow that, let's face it, there are some people who are physically unable to be here. Is there some way we can arrange that so that is an avenue for them to do it?
Certainly something like that could be written in. I mean, it's up for the council to decide whether or not you want that written in. It's not hard to do that, but from a perspective of, isn't that the same as then allowing everyone just to turn in a letter that will automatically be read in, as opposed to having to physically come and make your comment. But again, if the council wants us to add that language in, we can add it in. That's not difficult to add.
Follow up, Mayor?
Alderman Keister?
And express what I said before. I'm just concerned that there's a fair number of people that we're going to restrict from being able to make their comment if we don't have some availability through the alderman or let them send it in to be able to have it read.
But you already are available.
Mm-hmm.
With or without the ordinance.
Okay, so even if it's not in the ordinance, that we're still going to allow
You
that
still
if
are.
the constituent contacts us, we can read the letter for them.
Without even being written.
Okay, okay.
Further questions, discussion? Well, is there a motion to move this ordinance forward?
So move.
We have a motion made by Alderman Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Busker to move ordinance 2018-33 on to the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Item number 11 is opening bids for May 9th, 2018, bids for the squad cars. And Police Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. May 9th, we had a bid opening for our squad cars. We had one bid to compare against the state bid. The state bid was from Morrow Brothers in Greenfield, Illinois. The local bid was from Barkow Automotive in Stockton. The differences there were not only a little bit in price, but Barkow Automotive in Stockton was for the V8 all-wheel drive Dodge Chargers. And the state bid is for the V6 Interceptor sedan. They also carry a sport utility, a crossover, if you will, for an all-wheel drive Ford. You see the prices there. I think that minus the trade-in values, the Barkow and Stockton for the Dodge Chargers come in at $24,041. And the Morrow Brothers for the Interceptor, Police Interceptor sedan come in at $24,326. A couple different things too. One was a 17-week delivery. The other one was immediate delivery for the Ford sedans. And the other point consideration was the uniformity of having all Fords versus having a mixed fleet. I think for purposes of parts and so forth, I would recommend that we go with the Morrow Brothers state bid for the V6 Police Interceptor sedan. Also breaking down was the additional cost with each one of those cars, regardless of it's a Charger or Ford, all the wrappings, In God We Trust, that's included in that price of $4,200. The backseat inserts, the partitions, the squad changeover, new brackets, the cell and Wi-Fi antennas, just freight charges and bar windows. So the additional cost of 3 fully equipped squad cars is $86,078 out of line item 3102,742. Now that gives us a little bit left over, 23,922. And my recommendation was to replace the 2009 Ford Expedition that a few people on this board was when we purchased that used from Moline. And now it's really used. It's got over 100,000 miles on it, and it's beginning to really be not cost effective to maintain that in our fleet. My idea, if the council agrees, is to replace that, take that money that was left over and add it to the Fund 3102741 entitled Vehicles/Radios, and purchase that, and that would include fully equipped with all the, I think that's included in the memo is everything from insulation to the canine CAD, the canine cage, radio, center console, fully equipped with that. I'll entertain any questions if you have some.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Chief, would this additional expenditure out of your vehicles radios fund, will that deplete anything else that you need to purchase for this calendar year? Or this
No,
fiscal year?
well, that's right. We kind of keep that vehicles and radios / fund to, and I think you remember we purchased these not too long ago. So we use that to repair, replace existing portable radios, mobile radios, or consolettes. Yeah, it's always a kind of a risk each time you do that, but you try to take a look at weighing, some of the risk versus some of the reward. And I think that having the new K-9 squad that will be out there for many years to come is definitely worth the risk.
One follow-up? Yes. Thank you. And then that fund, would that be completely depleted, or do you have a little bit of money left in there?
Oh, there would
to
be,
handle
I
emergency?
checked on that, again, double checked. There'd be about $35,000 left in that fund.
And you think that's sufficient to get through?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to approve is requested for the four vehicles.
Second.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
discussion or question, if I could, please.
Yes.
Chief, just a quick one, because you hate to see something slipping away from a local person who has been good to us in the past, as far as the
No doubt
dealership.
about it.
I was kind of surprised as I read through this, and it takes, with a couple different things, you got to look at it a couple different ways, but there was nothing they could offer, even in switching to GMC/Chevrolet, anything in the intermediate car, like the Explorer, using for example.
That Barkow in Stockton.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything from the Stockton is who was at the bid opening.
Sure.
And no, they didn't have anything that was available.
And if I could, and the other thing is, 120-day delivery is a fair amount out.
Yeah. Right.
You'd really like to see it go local, but also along the same line. Many times we hate to say it, but the state bidder is a state bidder for a reason.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree, and that we make it a practice of going around and visit each one of the dealers, dropping off a bid package. We would like to get those. We've had those in the past, but I think when they went to Ford, that even our local Ford dealership really couldn't compare with this one. So these are police package vehicles as well, and so they're a little more upgrade.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Smith.
Lowell, we've, as you know, we've had a lot of discussion in front of this council regarding a lease program for other vehicles. Is there any reason we're not implementing that with the police?
Well, we've had a discussion with Enterprise about leasing the vehicles, and based upon the mileage that we have with the vehicles, the only vehicles that they could offer us for leasing to replace right now were any of the SUV vehicles. Because of our mileage, basically, they want to swap the vehicles out every 18 months on us. And at this point, that's the reason. They're going to come back and readdress this at a later point, but that's all that they're able to offer us right now. And the discussion that Todd and I have had is because the amount of time that it takes to get the vehicle upfitted, we felt that the leasing was not an option at this time frame.
So Enterprise wasn't offering any kind of a deal to upfit these vehicles in addition. They were just going to provide the stripped-down vehicle.
Right.
And we had to bear the cost to upfit them and
Outfit, yep.
transfer equipment over. Okay.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. So going into the bid process, you were looking for 4 vehicles, 3 squads, and an SUV, is that correct?
Yes, in generally speaking, depending on what each vehicle comes in and what we get for trade-ins, but as you know, we generally are looking for 4 vehicles if we can.
And as part of that, once you take into effect all the pricing and then the trade-in values, the dollar amount was pretty close between the 2 bids, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
The things that kind of tilted you towards the state bid was they also had an SUV.
Yes.
They can deliver it 17 weeks quicker.
Yes.
And talk to me a little bit about the third factor, why you prefer that vehicle that the type of vehicle that they're offering versus the other vehicle.
Well, okay, a couple different things. We've had these the Fords for 1 year, the current Ford Police Interceptor for a year now, and have been very impressed with them compared to the other cars. We went through a winter with all-wheel drive, which was very well received from all of our guys, and just having the uniformity of all Fords as far as or the mechanic or ordering parts, and then when we take parts, like we'll see how it goes, but the backseat inserts would be able to go from one squad car to the next squad car, or the partitions, or even all the way down to the back window bars through that window. It's funny that the Chevys wouldn't fit, the Fords, or, so on and so forth.
Okay, follow up, Mayor. So you believe everything you described on the vehicle is, so for the vehicle preference, plus the quicker delivery, plus the availability of the SUV, more than makes up for the less than $300 difference between the 2 bids on the squads?
Yes, I do, yes.
All right.
Any further questions, discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
motion to move it forward?
Actually, I already have it.
Okay, sorry.
I already got that. So we've got a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Chesney for the approval for the bids as stated. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage, please?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
And Chesney.
Aye.
The motion is approved, 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And item number 12 is the approval of the letter of support for the International City County Management Association and the Solar Foundation for the City of Freeport to the Soul Smart community. Manager Crow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is something that Director Bucas, myself, and Ben Fritz, building inspector, and Steve Cox have all been working on it to establish this as a solar smart community, soul smart community. You'll be seeing in the next coming months ordinances that align us with solar zoning standards. And this says we're moving forward to be to establish develop a solar zoning standard, and allow the placing of panels and equipment in the city as permitted. And this makes us eligible through these 2 organizations for follow-on energy grants as we go forward to install them, not only on city buildings, but on businesses throughout the building. This is just our first step to establish this as a soul smart community.
Any questions?
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. Looking at the letter, it seems like the main, I'll say criteria, or the main thing that we're showing for that is the idea that we are going to be implementing some zoning that allows for, not mandates, but allows for maybe increased solar use. What are some of the other requirements for being a solar smart community that we haven't seen yet?
Well, one's that we promote solar as a way to offset energy costs within the city, much as we're doing with the wastewater treatment facility. We're promoting solar and working with solar developers. We establish both zoning and building ordinances that allow, while meeting zoning and requirements and building requirements, do allow for the installation of solar in those buildings.
Okay, so follow, Mayor.
Yes.
So basically involves steps to be kind of solar friendly, not, again, solar mandating or additional cost.
That's correct.
Just a conducive, an environment that's conducive to that development.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
Alderman McClanathan, one of the things that was discussed coming up through the building commission and everything was some of the standards that needed to be done to put on a solar roof. For example, you know, hey, you don't want to put one on a bad roof, yada, yada. And, you know, there was a lot of stuff leading up to it and what was required, and looked at best practices for other places. So I think definitely it is a good thing moving forward. And with some of the other things that we've seen so far, it'll tie in to be a good process.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
with your permission, I just want to read 2 sentences out of this that would help the community understand what this is all about. This is a letter of support for our city to become friendly with solar panel usage. So I'm going to read the first sentence out of the second paragraph. We are currently in the process of developing a solar zoning standard which will allow the placement of photovoltaic panels and ancillary equipment in most areas of the city as a permitted use. Third paragraph, first sentence is, we are in the process of developing a long-range plan for our community. So basically, this is just a plan to make us friendly for the solar panels, and it's at no cost, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to accept the letter into file.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Bradshaw, seconded by Alderman McClanathan for the approval of the letter of support. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
And Chesney.
Aye.
That passes 7-0.
Thank you. Department heads, Finance.
Thank you, Your Honor. Late last week, the General Assembly passed a $38.5 million state budget that does have an impact on the city, and Governor Rauner signed that appropriation bill today. As part of that budget bill, the General Assembly is cutting 5% of our local government distributive fund, also known as our income tax fund, as a one-time cut. Last year, they cut it by 10%, but this is only, I'm trying to think how I'm going to explain. Rather than cutting it again 10%, they're only cutting it 5%. So we're 5% ahead than we were last year. So there is a little bit more money there. And I believe the Illinois Municipal League is estimating that 5% would restore about $98 million of revenue to municipalities. They also amended their sales tax administrative fee. Currently it's 2%, and it's costing us about $62,000 a year for them to collect our sales tax and that, our home rule sales tax, and they lowered that to 1.5%. The only Municipal League was trying to get them to lower it to 1%, but were unsuccessful. The bill also included a provision, what they call the Marketplace Fairness Act, and this provision will require that out-of-state retailers to collect use tax from online purchases made in Illinois. And if you recall from our budget process, we noticed that our use tax was going up, and this, again, will probably see an increase in our use tax revenue as well. With respect to the corporate replacement tax, they did take out another $300 million from our for local government, and they continue to erode our local revenues from that tax, our replacement tax. And there was also another bill that was proposed that was to reallocate up to $4.3 million in corporate replacement tax revenue to certain school districts. It was approved by the Senate, but it failed to pass in the House. And the last issue, I guess that was the last issue. So overall, I think the state budget was what we were kind of expecting. We did anticipate those cuts, and we did budget for them.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Alderman,
Mayor.
yeah, Alderman Chesney.
Thank you, Director. Since we anticipated the expected cuts, but maybe not some of the other things. Will our budget positively be impacted by these changes? Because you said a few of
It'll be
those.
Slightly positive impact. We're going to save about $15,000 in the administrative fee that they were giving us, and we'll see a little bit of an increase in the income tax as well. So it is a positive impact, but it's not a major impact.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Director McDonald.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind the citizens that it's mowing season, so we all need to do our part, make sure that we're keeping our yards properly maintained. And also just a reminder that we do have our citizen engagement app. It's called iWorks, and you can access that either on the city's website, or you can download the application on your iPhone or Droid telephone. And that will allow you to report a nuisance to the city. It's a little more of an efficient way to do that. Thank you.
Questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, Chesney.
Thank you. Director McDonald, I can hear the constituents already say, well, that's great, but the city needs to mow theirs too. And I've seen many throughout our community that haven't been mowed, but then we ticket those that don't mow. So what does the timeline look like? I mean, obviously, it's a moving target because homes get, vacated and, we kind of don't own them, but, maybe they're owned by the county and there's just a lot of things going on. But what does that mowing look like?
We actually looked at the list today, along with myself and the code enforcement supervisor, and we're developing a plan as we speak to address those properties very soon.
And to go back, so the properties that were owned by the county, I've actually been in contact with the county, and they feel because they're tax based properties that all parties are affected. So then they've put that onus back on us to mow the properties, even though that because they're within the taxing district, and once they get a tax sale, they get back on the tax rolls. So those were added into our list.
Follow-up, Mayor? Thank you. Director, just walk me through the process of how we identify properties that need to be mowed. So if something's not mowed, we would offer a notice, offer a second notice, and then why wouldn't we just mow it and lean it? What's the...
Actually, what we do is there's a couple different ways. Either the code enforcement officer will go out and notice something, or we'll get notified by a citizen that there's an issue, or maybe a councilman. And then we go out, we have a warning, and then there's a three-day time frame for them to be in compliance. And if that doesn't happen, then they will receive a fine. And immediately on Fridays, we notify our contractor under our mowing RFP of the list of properties that they need to address the next week.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Busker.
Yes, along with that, over the winter, do you keep a list of the properties that you have had the previous year? Because I've seen year after year the same properties get up to 3-4 foot tall grass before we even approach them to mow them, and it just looks terrible. I mean, we know those properties are vacant. I mean, can't we just put them on the list as to start mowing them right away so they don't get overgrown? Because the other issue is, I've seen it where our contractors are mowing, that the grass is left on the sidewalks. That's safety risk for anyone walking through there, slipping, falling, and some of the grass even ends up in the street.
Right. We're actually working on that. Unfortunately, with our turnover that we've had, a list such as that doesn't appear to have existed. So we're putting that list together. So next year, we'll have this list ready to go. In terms of our contractor, we did receive some complaints that yards were partially addressed but not completely addressed, and certainly the raking and things like that weren't happening. So what we're doing is working with our contractor to make sure that they're doing everything that they said they were going to do when they bid the RFP.
Thank you.
Sure.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Tom.
Just kind of a follow-up, because the nuisance department loves me in the last week or two. But one of the things when you talk about this, and Alderman Chesney, you started, I believe, to hit on it a little bit, the number of properties that the city mows is a big-time number to start out with. Is one of the things we maybe should look at or what we do. Then you talk about the county says, well, no problem, we aren't gonna mow them, you go ahead and mow them. So that means last year, they used to mow those properties, tell me if I'm wrong, 2 or 3 times a year, the county?
Yes, the county used to mow the tax properties 2 to 3 times a year. They are no longer mowing those properties.
So keep in mind, if you're in the city and you live next door to one of these properties, it's not gonna get mowed, so we're gonna have to suck it up.
Well, one of the things I'm meeting with the township tomorrow along with the code enforcement supervisor. They have offered additional bodies to help us mow the properties. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna address those properties that are listed as the county to be work. It's for the people that are on their work program, and we're going to sit down with them tomorrow.
So it really boils out to be, as we talk about it, a lot bigger problem than a lot of people realize, especially on corridors coming into town. And you and I both know when you mow them when they're a foot high or a foot and a half high, they're going to look like a hay field. You know, so we do have some issues there that I just need to, I appreciate you guys jumping on it like you have, and I mean, we just got to figure out, they know it's going to cost, but a solution that's a little more helpful, you know. We appreciate all you've done.
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Yes, and I recognize it's complex and it's a moving target. One thing they did in Rockford was a mow-to-own program. So we have to look at something, because in most cases, the only value to these properties are those that are on either side of it. And, you know, the likelihood of this being redeveloped is about 0. So we have to come up with some sort of plan to eliminate or alleviate some pressure on properties that are owned.
Yep, I see several making notes on the mow-to-own program, so thank you for that little tidbit. I'm serious. Yeah. Alderman Keister.
Yes, thank you. To expand upon, we were talking about blowing grass on sidewalks and the streets. First of all, I believe there's an ordinance against blowing grass in the street when you're mowing, if I'm not mistaken. And second of all, what people have to realize is when that grass gets out there, if there's any moisture in there at the same time, that becomes very slick and very hazardous to bicycles, motorcycles, and any other two-wheel hazards or two-wheeled vehicles that come by. Believe me, I know several buddies of mine that have gone down sliding on grass when it was wet. So please, do not blow the grass in the sidewalk. Not only does it look bad, but it could get somebody hurt as well.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
Just adding to that, you know, a person may sit out there and think, well, geez, why are they so mad at everybody mowing the grass in the street? One of the major issues becomes that you don't stop and think about is all that goes down the sewer, clogs the sewer, goes through all the pumps and everything else that we're spending a whole lot of money to repair and replace. So it's not necessarily just the fact that we don't like grass in the street, it's that it causes a lot of problems with equipment for the city.
Public Works.
Yes, we currently have some street crews that are out painting, so I please ask that if you see cones at the end of painted lines, please don't drive on the lines. It's hard enough for them to get straight lines, let alone when they start driving in and out of them. Last week, the paver caught on fire. I think that was on Tuesday. They got it distinguished, and when our mechanic got back in the shop, we actually got it repaired. So next week, we're hoping that when we put a little mix in it, we can actually keep that rolling as an asset for the community. I'm going to start topoing north of Empire on Float Street, and most of that is because after a few talks with IDOT, we had to adjust our approach on how we were going to do Float Street. Some of the ways that projects had been done in the past aren't actually how they should have been done, and the city kind of got an out from IDOT, and we're not going to kind of have to repay some of those that we used inappropriately. So we do have that going for us. We at least had that, you know, that lucky shoe on us. The forestry clam truck, the hydraulics are beginning to go out. So if you see the forestry people out there and they're having a little bit of a hard time, it might be because the outriggers are starting to show a little wear. So that is all I've got.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Sorry, lots of questions. What year, you said we made some mistakes on some road projects?
Yes.
And what years did those
Last
take place?
year.
Last year?
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, fire.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple items. Last Friday, 3 of our firefighters graduated from the 14-week fire academy over at the Rockford Fire Department. Great reviews on these people, and it was very encouraging to hear. Firefighters Amos Langlos, Nate Stepp, and Brad Tunick all graduated and are back getting on shift over the next 3 days here, which is good as well. Also, a little bit of an activity. Today we went over into the West Suburban Fire District, which is West Rockford, for a pretty big fire they had over there. So it was a MABUS call out. We sent a crew over for structure fires, 2 houses side by side on fire. And then also this afternoon we had, if you saw some activity downtown, 300 North Adams, we had a shed back behind McNess underneath some of the power lines there that was burning as well. So a couple items going on for us.
Police.
Thank you, Mayor. We had Memorial Day went off safe and successful for everybody involved. It's a very big weekend for us. It's a holiday weekend. There's a lot of activity about, not only with the parade, but it was safe and successful, so we're happy about that. Also, it's special event season, so we'll be very busy with special events throughout the city, downtown, and even in neighborhoods. So that's all I have.
Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
Yes. Chief, real quickly, what are you doing, or how's it coming on enforcement for cell phones while driving? Because I know I've been getting notices of quite a few motorcycle accidents and stuff that have been caused by people with cell phones going across yellow lines and taking out 2 and 3 bikes at a time. If they're doing that to bikes, they're also taking cars out. And I'm just kind of curious how successful you're being in Freeport and what you're doing to try and prevent that.
Well, right, it's kind of hard to quantify. We do write that many times, write tickets for that. That is very, very dangerous as far as distraction, driving while distracted. So we enforce that whenever we're available, whenever we can, whenever we see that. And so it's hard to say exactly what that number is, but we certainly, particularly during the step enforcement, the sustained traffic enforcement details that we do. So it is certainly high on our list. Yes, thank you.
Follow up, Mayor.
Yes.
And the reason I ask that is I know of at least 3 motorcycles that have been taken out within the past week and a half, not in Freeport, but in this area, where 4 people were put in the hospital and 1 person had minor injuries. And both of them were caused by somebody on a cell phone. So it's a very serious situation, and I don't know what more you can do about it, but I think it's something that people really need to start thinking about and we need to address.
There's no doubt about that. Thank you for bringing that up. I think, you know, it's everybody, you know, it's not uncommon to see that, but hopefully we can get to that point where enough education and enough enforcement that it was kind of like, you know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it wasn't hard to find somebody not wearing a seatbelt. It's awful difficult today to not find somebody. So hopefully with enough enforcement, enough education, we can get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Water and sewer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Our construction crews are handling some drainage repairs. Treatment plants are running fine, and the big thing this week is I've got the construction crew over at Debate Square installing that new water fountain that's ADA compliant for adults and children.
Thank you. IT. Nothing? I guess that would leave, next would be the manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple things. One of the other things that was passed, and you will, on the latest legislative go-around, is small cell tower legislation. These are cell towers below 25 feet that do not currently fit our ordinance. This will allow actually private citizens possibly to lease out their yards for small cell towers, as well as placing cell towers on local, basically the ComEd power poles. There is legislation that has been proposed for each one of the municipalities to address this from IML, and I've got Roxanne drafting it. Will be coming in front of the council coming forward. So we're seeing some of the other things. We're still waiting for, there is new historical tax credits that was also passed by both House and Senate. We're still waiting for the governor to signature on it to determine what the actual impact is to our community. It changed river edge tax credits as well as historical tax credits. So as soon as I get that information, I'll pass it out to you. Had a successful farmers market as it's moved down to Exchange Street, started this weekend. And then on Tuesdays, it'll be over in the main parking lot, municipal parking lot in front of the U.S. Bank building. Greater Freeport Partnership, as we talked about earlier, is officially stood up. As of tomorrow, all the websites are combining into one. We also had the first music on Chicago. Next one will be the weekend after the 4th of July. So starting the summer events in the city, and looking forward to them.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Thought I recalled on the Tuesday, they said there was going to be in the parking lot beyond the old public safety building. Now it's going to be in the US Bank one?
They changed their mind as to where they wanted to locate it.
What parameters of the US Bank one are they going to be in?
It's going to be...
That's a pretty full lot.
First come, first served. There's only 5 vendors on Tuesday.
Okay. Okay.
In an open area that's small.
Any other questions for the manager? Okay, well then, I just have 2 things. Just to remind the council that this Thursday at 4 o'clock at the Wagner House is the director for NIDA's retirement. So if you can avail yourself to that, Dave Young is retiring. His party is on Thursday. This Thursday, yep, at 4 o'clock at the Wagner House. And then also, I would like to say happy birthday to Tommy Tyke. His birthday was this weekend. And Tommy, I just want to say thank you that you have been a great support and positive all the time for this administration. And I want to say thank you for that. And I have a little something for you.
He hopes it's a cupcake.
It's a little birthday cake for you, Tommy. I just wanted to say thank you and happy birthday. And now on to new business. Alderman Clem.
Couple things. I'm going to try to get to Lowell next week so we can talk about it to Cow. I know we got some upcoming things there, but overall, nothing except going along with what we talked about. Is please mow your grass. Please clean up your yards. It's that time of year.
Thank you. Alderman McClanathan.
I'll second the comments and nothing further.
Thank you. And if you could remember Alderman Ross, he's been sick since Thursday. Alderman Smith.
Nothing, Your Honor.
And Alderman Busker.
Nothing this evening.
Alderman Brashaw.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
And Alderman Keister.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One real quick thing. This Saturday at the Albertus Airport from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. is the Young Eagles convention type deal out there where children from 8 to 17 can come out and get a free ride in an airplane. This is done by the local Pilots Association and the EAA, or Experimental Aircraft Association. It is at absolutely no charge to the children themselves. The rides are free. So we hope to see a lot of people out there. And no, this year I'm not flying, but hopefully I will be next year.
And what time did you say that is?
9 to 2.
Thank you. And Alderman Chesney.
Nothing, Mayor.
Thank you. That leaves us with item number 17 being public comments. Tommy.
Thank you, Joey Miller, for that thing. And next down, did you have the update about the old Eagle store? Everybody asked me what they're going to do with it.
Not yet, Tommy.
And I want to know about that old city hall down the Stevens.
We don't have any information right now.
Oh, they got to wait for the bid?
No, we just don't have any information.
Hey, when's that everybody wants to know when's the Special Olympics thing at Melquette.
Yeah, the torch run.
Yeah.
Yes, that's coming up this month.
What day, you know?
Well, let me find out. It's June 14th.
June 14th, and I want to ask you, Todd, are you gonna let me know about the thing?
Yep, I'll let you know.
About the information about that Tuesday with,
Yes, I will. I'll follow up on that, Tommy.
all right.
Yep.
Thank you. And Terry, did you still have something you wanted to say? I do. Thank you. You can step up to- Yes, please.
With the microphone. Okay, I just want to first thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And I realize I'm a little bit slow coming out of the box talking about this, but I'd like to readdress the issue of the service fee that's been assessed for capital improvements on the pipes and the water and all of that. I have a very strong background in community and economic development. I've worked in it most of my professional life, either as someone who's either been a political appointee, I ran community development for the city of Indianapolis, or as a professor. And when I got the original bill notifying me that I had a $20 fee, I thought, okay, not so bad. I don't have much of a problem with this, but I did call and ask if this was a flat rate for everybody in the community, and I was told it was. At that time, I was not told that the plan was to increase it to $32 this year, and now I understand it's being increased to $40 next year. In all my years of working in community development and economic development, and I've worked with local governments all throughout Illinois and Wisconsin, I've never seen such a regressive, I realize it's not a tax, but that's really how it's viewed, as this one is. And I contacted the township today, and I got some figures that I think you really need to think about, and I really respectfully ask you to revisit this issue. Single-family housing and condos, both, in the city of Freeport, run the gamut from $543, this is value, to $462,375. Those are 2017 figures. I'm not sure how you can justify someone who is living in a house that's $543 worth of value, or even my house, which has lost 30% value since I moved here 12 years ago. And I'm underwater on a house that originally I paid $69,000 for, so that's pretty hard to do. And yet now, so my house is $40,000, and I'm paying the same fee that someone whose home value is $462,375. I've never seen anything so regressive in my life. I called and spoke with the city council, or the city, what is your title? I'm sorry.
Director of Utilities.
Thank you. I think you were the one I spoke to last week. And that's how I learned that I'd be paying $40 next year. I don't understand how a community of this size can do such a regressive tax. If you own a home that is worth $7,000 or $8,000, that's $40 is a lot of money. And when you compare that to someone who owns a home that's $462,000, and by the way, the only thing that I personally see so far with the work that's been done has been on Stevenson Street, where the houses are a lot more value than where I live on Wayne Street. And when I'm looking at a situation where people in my community can barely afford this. 2 years ago, I had $70 a month for food. If this was going to be next year, you would have just taken 40 more of that for me to have $30 a month for food. Now, I've since changed my financial situation, but there are a lot of people in this community who can't. And I just think this needs to be revisited. I just have never, in all my years of experience with local government, I've never seen anything like this. And this is a huge issue to me. And I have to say, in the last few days, since I've been talking to other people in the community, they're all up in arms, and they don't understand how this can be. That's a lot of money for someone who doesn't have a lot of money, especially when someone who does have a lot of money is paying the same dollar amount. So again, I respectfully ask that you reconsider that issue.
Thank you, Terry. We appreciate that.
Oh,
and
I'm like,
yeah,
where did it came
no,
over
I'm
there?
sorry.
Okay.
It's, your time has
That's
expired,
fine.
but we appreciate and sympathize as well. So,
Okay, all right, thank you.
is there any other public comments? Seeing none, I think this is the first time we've not had an executive session in a while, so I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
We have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Chesney. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Have a good evening.
What's that?
Like that.
Yeah, I told you, I'll look into yeah.
Maybe that's your award.
Mike?